My name's Clay Kua. I own Oakmond Design, and I build exclusive furniture. These are some of the slabs that I have recently dried. I had them air drying for a couple years, and I got them down to about 30%. And that's when I like to put them in my kiln. I've only done 2 cycles now, so I'm still kind of novice, but learning how to dry properly, and my second run was obviously much better. So these are the ones I'm very proud of. We've got some walnut here, white oak, hickory, some maple on the end there. I always have a variety of logs because these are all logs that I reclaim from down trees or windfall trees. So none of these were live trees when I cut them, I basically saved them. So my plan right now is to be able to have the client come here and we can actually select the slabs and they can feel more in tune with the process and picking the piece, and then it just adds more value and they can cherish it more down the road because they were a part of the project. I like being very one-on-one with my clients in that sense. I used a sawmill out in Johnstown that my shop teacher actually introduced me to. So I have been using their lumber for 20 years now, which the first 5 years when I was going to school, 4 years. I was kind of like a 5th year senior, but anyways, 4 years, I used their lumber, and then when I got into this myself, I called him up and said, where do I go to source my lumber? So I went to a family-owned operation in Johnstown, which is about 45 minutes from here, and they have piles of slabs, and they're real good people, like I said, family-owned, and they had any lumber that I could ever kind of imagine using. But as I started getting calls from friends and they were telling me, I have trees down, I have possible lumber for you to use. At that time I didn't have a sawmill, so I was only using their lumber and it wasn't my lumber. And I could kind of feel the start from it. I knew that there was an opportunity there if I had my own sawmill that I could invest not only myself more, but have the client be more invested and add value to the project. So I would say my favorite projects are the ones where we use their trees, and I'm starting to narrow down my project scope to doing that. And as you see here, these are gonna be ones clients can select from, but a lot of the times a client will come to me and say, I have a tree down, I wanna turn it into something. And some of the slabs that you actually see out here, there's a stack of hickory at the bottom, and that gentleman just built a home, and now I'm actually gonna build a dining table from that. So those are the projects I've always wanted to do, but it wasn't possible until I got the mill. And now these are the ones that I'm even more excited about because I love building furniture and using my craft to build something for someone. But when it's something that they value or a tree that could get repurposed, that is what I'm really leaning into now with my business. These are just a little further down the line in the process. These have obviously already been air dried, and now they've been kiln dried, which is why they're in this barn, which is the plan. So I'm gonna have to keep this clean and open so I can store these. But it's kind of fun because you can see the different stages here. These are the logs that I have went and saved or went and kind of reclaimed, and now they're in the staging area to wait to go on the sawmill to be milled and then start their drying process. But the ones in the back are actually, after I mill, now those are in the air drying process. So it's kind of fun to see. This is what they look like when I go get them. They do have to sit here because of the quantity of them that I have. I'm not able to mill them as they get here just because I have the inventory, which is a good thing, but you have to have the space. But then they do turn into this, and when I'm going through a lot of these, I am generating ideas of what they possibly could be, and it might not be for 2 or 3 years until I think about this log and I go, wait a second, the client wants to do a river table, they want to have maybe a limb jut out, and I can go back in my memory bank and pick that log out and go, I know exactly where it's at, and then hopefully it will be over here where the dried ones are, and we can just go in and look at those, and then they'll actually be able to select which slabs from that log. Let's say the log gives us 5 slabs or 6, they can pick the 2 to make that table or the base or whatever else they want with it. So that's how I envision the projects now when I get the logs in after they're dried, and that's what I'm hoping to do with them. That was my biggest concern, was when I looked into getting the mill. Obviously being a business owner, I think at the beginning it was going to be fun, and that was a huge aspect of, wow, like I could become the guy sawing the wood for my furniture. That was the biggest thing. But the next was, okay, from a business perspective, what's the ROI? How am I going to get the logs? How am I going to saw? How am I going to move them? Now, I mean, just that aspect was a thought in my head. But how I started was social media. I mean, it's everywhere nowadays, and I have a little following now too, so I could kind of wield that to find these logs, to get these logs. So I went on Facebook Marketplace, and I think within the first couple weeks, I was just sending out messages to random guys. I found some tree services. I have a couple buddies that also run tree services, and they saw that I had the sawmill through social media, and then next thing I know, I had 6 or 7 logs sitting here, and it just kind of happened overnight, it felt like, because it was one of the biggest concerns was, where am I getting the logs? And to this day, I can kind of pride myself. I have purchased 1 or 2 walnuts because I've seen them and they've talked me into it. But everything else, I have basically, it's been a win-win. The client gets the tree removed, the tree service doesn't have to remove it and then store it or discard it, and then I get a log to mill from that piece. And a lot of the times it turns into a project from the client, because as I get there and they see the operation, they go, well, what are you going to do with it? And I tell them I build furniture, and it's kind of how we start the process there. So that's also a little bit of a marketing thing that's helping the furniture side, not only the sawmill side, but both. So it just kind of, it makes sense at the end of the day. It's my advice would be, get a sawmill. That's what my shop teacher actually told me when I first got into this. I was like, all right, what's the biggest thing? He goes, Clay, I'm telling you, for whatever reason, I think you need to get a sawmill. He goes, I think you could handle it. And that was one thing that he regretted not doing, to have all the lumber. And obviously for building furniture, building pieces, what do you need? Wood. It's also the community, but the ecosystem and you could probably buy the sawmill and then become a furniture builder. Or me, I kind of did it backwards, and I was already building the furniture, but then I realized the benefits of the sawmill. So I think, like you're talking about, kind of the circle of all the things, they all come full circle, and you add in the social media and maybe some buddies that have the tree services, and then you get the logs. But you could also just drive down the road after a windstorm. I've also done that before. If you're willing to put in the effort and you can look at it from a different perspective, there's a lot of ways to do this, and it, like I said, it just kind of naturally happened. I might be really blessed because I have the friends and the support, but I think that anyone could get a sawmill and they can make it happen if that's what they want to do. I remember when I first started this, I was in college and I had some hand-me-down tools from my grandfather, and at the time I had an opportunity with an event planner, and they were kind of like lower grade projects is what I'll call them, plywood, and I was using like 2x4s and easily accessible material from Home Depot, Lowe's. That's kind of how I started. But quickly after that, and it was right as I think Instagram was kind of getting hot and I got an Instagram, but that was the start of it all. And I think I realized pretty quickly that this was an easy way to market. And I got a lot of my business knowledge from my grandfather, who started his business back when he was my age, and he was in the computer world. But at the same kind of parallel, it was like the very beginning, and I feel like I had the social media. So we both had to figure out those markets, but I had a lot of help from him because he had already been there. And he was the guy that taught me how to go bang on a door, pick up the phone. So I kind of meshed the two worlds together, like the old school business to like the social media. And a lot of my success from the social media stems from what he taught me and how he would go to market for his sales and how he operated. As an artist, I've always been interested in all aspects, not just one or two of them. I think it's odd the way my skill set works, because I like doing the photos, I like doing the videos, I like the editing portion of it, but then I also like the hardcore like artisan aspect of it. I mean, you could give me like an easel and some paintbrushes and I could sit there for hours. And not that I'm a good painter, but I'm not trying to say it, but I would enjoy what I was doing there, but just like the video. So it was very easy for me. I never felt forced trying to like, oh, I gotta make content, because I hear a lot of guys saying that, and I hate hearing that, because it should be fun for you. You you should be enjoying it. That's the whole reason we got into all of this. I mean, at least that's why I got into it. I didn't want to work the 9 to 5, and I didn't know what was going on with them. I just was some 18-year-old kid with a phone that was just throwing, videos up. But eventually it took, and now I have a decent following, and it has been probably one of the key factors of why I'm able to run Oakmond today. It's very easy for me to remember when I finally started researching and looking into getting a mill, because my mill at the time was charging $6 a board foot, $7 a board foot for Walnut, and then it jumped to like 10 or 11, like overnight. And I looked at my profit mark, was looking at my books, and I said, okay, what is that gonna do, not only to me, but my clients as well? Because for me to make any money, it's gonna exponentially raise the price of all my products. So I had to sit down and really kind of look at myself and say, I know it's a big investment, because not only the sawmill, but there was other things that go along with the sawmill, the trailer and the miles on the truck. But I said down the road, if this is something I plan to do for the rest of my life, and I'm very serious about it, which at the time business was starting to take off and I was very into growing Oakmond, I said, I think this is the next move for, it was like a door had opened. I saw that, and it was just, once again, like I've said about the logs, how it just kind of happened, and that sounds such like a cop out, like it just happened, but it really did. Lumber prices went up right at COVID. Everyone was home, and then I was looking at all my options, like my grandfather instilled in me, before you make any decisions, make sure you do your research. So I was online, and a buddy actually down the street here that I went to school with, he was building a house up the way, and he had bought a sawmill. And at the time, he actually approached me and said, hey, I have a sawmill now. If you'd like to, I can make you lumber if you have logs. So when I went over to see his and saw what it was capable of, I remember it was the 130, because I remember I went and bought the exact same one like the next week after we talked, and he was like, I'll make the lumber, I'll charge you, whatever the mills are charging. And I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. I'm gonna pay you for the same lumber. And I was like, I would love to help out a buddy, but at that point I'll just buy my own mill. So I went online, looked at all the different features of it, and I did a lot of weighing. It wasn't an overnight thing, and I got the 130 about 3 years ago, and then after running that mill, I realized that I loved it and I wanted to go a little bigger. So got on social media, talked to the wonderful team over at Woodland Mills, and they hooked me up with this 136MAX that I've now been running for a couple months. And I believe I have right at 10 hours, because I just did the oil change and oil filters. Yes, right at 11. So I had about 50 or 60 on the other mill and this one. So I've been running them now for 60, 70 hours and haven't had an issue, haven't had to replace anything. They've been absolutely wonderful. It's gas, blades, and oil. This will be a cool one. The bark's kind of coming off of it, and I've milled the other 2 or 3 like this, and these had laid down. These were in a pile from a gentleman on Facebook I can remember, because they were a little bit smaller than I typically like to mill, but because they were walnut, I was more apt to take them. But he had 3 of them that had been laid down, and I had a couple buddies say, hey, be careful, because those are probably either pre-rot or starting to get a little nasty. They said I caught it at the right point, because as you'll see when we start, probably just kicked myself in the butt now, because we're going to cut into it. It's not going to be what I think it is. But the other 2 that were with this one, the heartwood has kind of leached out, and it's a really beautiful, almost marbleization. It's not that hard cutoff that I've seen in traditional walnuts. So when we get out to the sapwood, I mean, the sapwood's only like a 1/2 inch wide, and it's even kind of like toned out, but it's all the way through. There's not a whole lot of sapwood. So, but any further down the road, I think these would have been starting to get punky and kind of soft and nasty. But as you can see, the bark started, and that's from me being lazy and not getting them milled in time. They've been out in the sun, so the bark's kind of dried off of them. But these are really fun to mill, and that's kind of why I wanted to do this one. This is always where I video, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's so satisfying. That'll do well on Instagram. Hold on, buddy. There we go. I want it just a tear that way. I think they say, and this could be wrong, you could probably tell me if it's true or not, the blade dulls faster when it has the bark on it.
It does, yeah.
So because I see the sawmills, they have like a debarking machine, and I'm like, whoa, that's pretty cool. But I try to get off as much, and not only that, because I am on gravel, sometimes the bark's on, I catch little rocks and stuff, so that's where this comes in. I used to take a leaf rake. I should say I used to. If it is real bad, I see a lot of rocks, I'll take a leaf rake first, and then I'll end with this. But things I used to not do because I didn't think it mattered when I first started doing this, that, you know what, the extra 1.5 minutes doing what I'm doing right now, it might seem stupid, but if it saves a blade and it just makes a better cut, then it's all worth it. Worth it to me anyways. Now that I have the sharpener, it's not as much of an issue. I got re-lazy because I have the sharpener now, where I'm like, screw it, I'll just sharpen it if it gets dull again, but. This will make for some good kindling this winter. Some very expensive kindling. Oh yeah, this already shows, so you can already kind of see. And this should be the lowest grade cut, I would imagine, because it's all the way on the outside, but you see how there's not a whole lot of sapwood at all. I mean, that right there is gonna make for a hell of a slab. When I'm typically milling walnut, I don't want a lot of that sapwood just because of the blonde color, so I'll actually cut more of the waste cut off. But knowing what I knew from the previous logs from this lot, I knew that I could get a lot out of this guy, so I purposely took off minimal here. But yeah, now we'll roll this thing and start slabbing it. There you go. Here we go. When I first started milling, I was cutting everything at 2 inches, and I don't know if it was just because I wasn't thinking or if it just was easier or it was a nice round number, but obviously after you dry it, then when you mill it to get it flat, you're down to 1 3/4, 1.5 inches pretty quickly. And if a client wants something thicker, so I have recently started milling at like 2 1/4. Now I can set my scale because I have my starting point. Little knot feature here. Once again, I look at it and it's, I mean, here there's not even sapwood, which just blows my mind. Here you have it, but yeah, these are gonna be, out of that whole stack over there, I have some pretty wide ones that'll be great, but these ones visually I really love. There you go, that's a really cool Good. Starting to see that knot really starting to form. This is kind of the thing that I'm proud of because it's not a typical kiln body. This is a refrigerated box unit